Okay guys, hopefully this video will serve as a refresher on what we've been working on as far as perimeter, area, and volume. The key things that I want you to remember is that anytime that you're dealing with perimeter, it's the same thing as building a fence around an area. You just need to add up all the sides. Pretty easy, but sometimes problems get tricky. For example, not all of the sides are always labeled. So you have to realize that the opposite sides would be the same length. These should have right angle measurements letting you know that everything is a right angle. But if you don't add up all the sides, this would appear to be 5 plus 4, which is 9 centimeters. Well, that's only a fence that covers part of your area. You want to build a fence around the whole area, so you would really add 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 4 centimeters, and 4 centimeters, and get a total of 18 centimeters. Remember that the units are not squared because you're just adding, you're not multiplying anything. Same thing goes with other shapes, triangles, any of the polygons that we've dealt with, just add up all the sides. The one thing that may be a little bit different for you is when we deal with a parallelogram. The reason being is because with parallelograms, a dashed line is sometimes given to indicate how tall the shape is, what the height is. So that is not included in your area. If you had a section that, or a piece of ground that you wanted to put a fence around that was shaped like a parallelogram, you would add this side, this side, this side, and this side, but you wouldn't include the dashed area. That's just a reference to tell you what the actual height is, because you cannot tell how tall something is using a diagonal line. Remember, it always has to be a 90-degree right angle. So for this one, it would be 10 plus 10 and 8 plus 8, which would give you an area of 26 inches. I'm sorry, a perimeter of 26 inches. And that is just plain inches, not squared or anything. Area, it's the same thing as putting tile down on a floor, painting an area, or putting carpet down on a floor, something like that. You want to cover a flat two-dimensional space. And the way that you get that is a couple different formulas. And remember, you can always look at your reference sheet for the formulas, and I encourage you to use the formulas. For the area of rectangles and squares, length times width. So this side times this side. And then for a parallelogram or a rhombus, you want to use the base, which is what the object sits on, and then how tall it is. We have to use the distance from this line to the base, the lines that are parallel, because that tells you exactly how tall that shape is. So you would use base times height. Basically, you're doing the same thing as length times width, but you use the height, that ghost line, that imaginary dotted line that's there that's not actually a part of the shape. Your answer is always going to be in units squared, and you have to make sure that you have the appropriate unit. Now, the one difference on this is whenever we have a triangle. And a triangle is basically half of a parallelogram or half of a rectangle or a square. And so the formula is 1/2 of the original formula. So for this shape, for the rectangle, it would be 1/2 base times the height. And then for the parallelogram, same thing. 1/2 base times the height. Don't forget that half. Multiplying by 1/2 is the same thing as dividing by 2. So if you have an answer that's a fractional in fractions, I would multiply by 1/2. If you have whole numbers or you have decimals, I would take your answer and divide it by 2. But always start with the formula, and don't forget to do that key component, because you only want to know what half of the area is. The last topic on this video has to do with volume. And volume is essentially the same thing as filling a swimming pool. So if you wanted to find out how many gallons of water it would take to fill a swimming pool, let me adjust the tripod here. Sorry about that, guys. If you wanted to figure out how many gallons of water it would take to fill a swimming pool, you would measure the length, multiply the length times the width times how tall it is. Basically, you are seeing how much will fit inside of this space, the volume of it, what can it contain. And because you are multiplying 3 dimensions, length times width times height, your answer is always going to be in units cubed. So your answer has to have that cube symbol. You are multiplying 3 dimensions by each other. So that's it for this video. Like I said, hopefully it's just a refresher, but we will continue working on this in class.